Daniel is an alumnus of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade's Leaders of Tomorrow program and has an incredible story. Wait till you hear this. He started the first of his 2 clothing companies at age 12. He's played competitive rugby in England and Wales and competitive basketball in New York. He actually turned down a pro basketball contract in Europe to accept the Next Big Thing Fellowship at Hootsuite, and he was named one of the top 10 entrepreneurs in Canada under the age of 25. He also co-founded a laneway housing company, which is now leading $50 million in property development. So what's next for Daniel? Well, he led a 20-plus person team across Europe to research the future of the sharing economy, which is part of what he'll talk to you about tonight. Please welcome Daniel.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Awesome. My name is Daniel Dubois. I'm the founder and CEO at ShareShed. At ShareShed, we're creating a world of unlimited access to adventure with a website and mobile app for people to rent outdoor equipment off of locals. Let's say you want to go kayaking this weekend, but you don't own a kayak. With ShareShed, you're connected to a local to simply rent off of them. Essentially, we're Airbnb for outdoor adventure gear, and we're making it easy to have fun outside. Now for today, I thought we'd talk about a little bit more of my background and inspiration within this new movement of the sharing economy. I was also asked to touch on how we can use business as a force to make a difference in the world and how we can use our values to guide our actions. Now, the sharing economy is like shooting a moving target. It's a bit of a fuzzy term, and there's a constant debate whether it's good or bad for society. Some people say that it's decentralizing wealth and empowering local communities, where other people say that it's pure capitalism and we're consolidating wealth within these new exponential organizations. We'll play a little bit of devil's advocate and learn how we can create a future where we all truly thrive. When I graduated high school, my friend talked me out of going directly into university and into backpacking Australia with him for 6 months. It was an absolute trip of a lifetime. Only 3 weeks into our trip, on a warm summer night in Surfers Paradise, we connected with a family who brought us into their house and hosted us. We actually moved into their garage that was filled with a ton of gear. It had bikes, snowboards, surfboards, even drums and guitars, and we took full advantage of it. We'd wake up in the morning and go surfing with the dad or bike trips with our neighbors. It was incredible how we were literally on the other side of the world, but all of a sudden we were part of this tight-knit community. We were so far from home, but had a true sense of belonging. When I came home, I went to university, and in my entrepreneurship class, we watched a TED Talk called The Rise of Collaborative Consumption by Rachel Botsman. This talk was on the rise of the sharing economy and made me completely redefine what I view as wealth, from what I own to what I have access to. It made me think back to Australia and how we truly were wealthy, in the sense that we didn't own a snowboard or a surfboard, but we were still going surfing. We didn't own bikes, but we're still going cycling. In fact, we were broke backpackers and had nothing, but because we were part of this tight-knit community, we had access to anything we could ever want. It made me want to create that same world that I felt in Australia, not only for other backpackers, but here at home in our own backyard. Before I jump too far ahead, I'd like to give you an example of how the sharing economy works. So by show of hands, how many people here own a drill, a power drill? So raise them high and take a look around for a moment. And this is a young crowd, this is ridiculous. Quick stat about the drill. The average amount of time that a drill is in use from the day that you buy it to the day that it ends up in a landfill is under 15 minutes. Under 15 minutes. And what's even crazier is that you don't have to own a drill to be able to have access to one. You just need access to a drill. On top of that, half the households across North America own a drill. So now think about all the other gear, all the other items and assets that we have that are sitting completely unused or idle for most of the year. So at the core of this new economy is really empowering people to take advantage of these underutilized assets, whether they're our accommodation, transportation, or other items, such as, or even things like our space or our time. So this is an educated group, so I'm sure you're well aware, but the world is in a bit of an environmental mess right now. We have a garbage patch twice the size of Texas in our Pacific Ocean. What really excites me about this new movement, though, is the ability for us to shift our society from a culture of hyper-consumption and ownership to interdependence and access. Not only will we significantly benefit the environment, but we'll also be putting back many of the values that we share, such as community, into our everyday lives. So This is what Rachel Botsman was talking about when I was watching this TED Talk, is redefining wealth from what we own to what we have access to, of what type of house we live in to what type of community we're a part of. I couldn't help but think about how this is going to be revolutionizing all different types of industries. You look even locally at transportation with startups like Moto, Car2Go, Evo, and even Zipcar. People are no longer buying cars, they're buying mobility. Really, it's a shift in mindset. It's a generational shift towards valuing experiences over objects. So as I was sitting in this class, I just got goosebumps thinking about it now. I knew that I had to get involved. I went up to my teachers and I asked them, how can I maximize my time in this new movement? How can I learn more? And at the time, not one of them had even heard of the sharing economy. So I spontaneously packed my bags, and the next day I drove straight from Vancouver to San Francisco, where I directed a film series on the sharing economy. I met with top thought leaders, companies, and influencers, companies such as Facebook, Google, and Airbnb. At the time, Airbnb was just starting to blow up. They have continued to follow this exponential growth curve, and they're now bigger than the top 3 hotel chains put together, and they don't own a single room. They're valued at over $25 billion, and we can travel the world with having a sense of belonging everywhere we go. Now, at CYP, I was recently told that you worked on a project on addressing affordability in Vancouver, specifically within housing. One of the groups I met with in San Francisco started something called they call it co-housing, the first ever urban co-housing spot. And in Mountain View, California, where a basement bachelor suite costs $1,500 a month to rent, a group of people came together and rented this incredible mansion that they're paying $750 a month each to rent out. And this same group then got a place in downtown San Francisco where they have a bowling alley in their house, and on the 3rd floor of this mansion they have a sauna, and once again they're all paying less than if they were to rent a bachelor suite alone. When I came home, another incredible opportunity came up, and that was to travel to Europe, where I received a monthly grant from the government of Austria to study the future of the sharing economy there. I led a team of just over 20. In the last year alone, I traveled to over 25 countries while living and breathing this movement. It was incredible how I felt that same sense of community, that same sense of belonging that I felt in Australia in the 25 countries that we visited. Now, more than ever, I feel that wealth is not ownership, it's access. That true wealth is absolute freedom. It's understanding our values and being aligned with our purpose. And if anything, true wealth isn't about wealth whatsoever, but it's about the degree to which we have loving relationships with each other. It's about community. And if anything, the idea of ownership, my mindset has changed a bit as well. I think for us to truly thrive and us to feel wealthy, we actually need to take ownership, but it's to take ownership in the things that matter most to us. When I came home, more opportunities came up. I was named top 10 entrepreneur in Canada under the age of 25 by the Next Big Thing Foundation. We received office space at the Hootsuite headquarters, industry professional mentorship, all different types of in-kind support. I was lucky enough to be able to share the message of using business as a tool to make a difference in the world on stage at We Day in front of 20,000 youth. I also recently just gave a TEDx talk at TEDx SFU, and last year representing Canada at the G20 summit, where we influenced global policy on the future of different movements such as the sharing economy. Now, what really gets me going about this new movement is the ability to have a strong triple bottom line. So people, planet, and profits. Companies, not just like ShareShed, but a lot of companies that are engaged in this new movement have not only profitable businesses that have the potential to grow exponentially, but also every transaction that takes place on these sharing economy local-based startups, money's now going directly into the local economy, which has a ripple effect that benefits many people beyond just the person who's receiving the money. There's also the idea of more community connections. So using the power of technology to actually get people offline. The City of Vancouver and the Vancouver Foundation did a report on what is the biggest challenge that our city faces. And to many people's surprise, it wasn't homelessness or affordability, but rather loneliness and social isolation. So how can we use the power of technology to actually connect as humans again? Also, there's the idea of empowerment. So before there was people and there was jobs. And now people can have a secondary revenue stream within 60 seconds or less. So now when you're spending money or having a transaction on these new companies, you're going and supporting that individual or family directly. We touched a little bit more on the planet, the idea of shifting our society and culture away from hyperconsumption and towards more interdependence and access over ownership. One thing that I'm extremely passionate about is the idea of increasing more access to outdoor adventure. I feel like the relationship that we have with nature and our environment is somewhat non-existent. There's no cause or effect with our actions. So my big why behind ShareShed is I believe if we make it easy to have fun outside and to get people out there and living vibrantly and taking away all the barriers, then we will be able to develop a relationship with our environment. And we'll be more likely to care about nature and our environment once we have a relationship with it. Now, where do I see this movement going? I feel like we live in a day of pure instant gratification. And the sharing economy is a bit of a fuzzy term, and the language changes, collaborative economy and all the different sub-movements underneath it, and one is the on-demand economy. And we're now seeing on-demand economy for things like food on demand, drinks, and clothing. And I think that this is really going to take off in the coming years. Just out of curiosity, how many people here get thoroughly upset if someone calls them during the day and their phone goes off? Yeah, raise your hand. So this is a growing trend right now, is that everything is now on our clock. That really, when we get a phone call now, it's like, why are they calling me, right? It's like, text me, like, I don't want to talk right now, I'll talk to you when I want to. And now, where I see this going is almost like a one-click economy, if you will. And especially with driverless cars, we're going to be able to get whatever we want, when we want, on our time. Now, I recently drove the Tesla. I don't even know if drove is the right word. It was their self-driving one. And I'm blown away with how advanced this technology is. It even had perpendicular parking, so not parallel parking, but perpendicular. And I had no idea that the technology is it's here now. And I have a quick video just to show you how far advanced driverless technology is.
Go is the right word. Holy shit.
Now, this is from the internet, so there's a bit of swearing involved. So.
There's no fucking hands on that wheel.
Excuse
oh my
me.
God. What? It's driving itself.
So you guys get the point. It continues. But that's where we're at now. So we have this technology, and soon it's going to be anything you could ever want on demand. Now, Uber, there's a lot of conflict and back and forth of whether this is good or bad for society, right? And Uber recently wrote an article or published that they're going to create 1 million jobs for women and empowering these families and individuals around the world to have secondary revenue streams, which really gets me excited, and that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic. At the same time, there's a recent article about how Uber is going to destroy 10 million jobs with automated vehicles. Now, people get very heated about this topic, right? With increased efficiency, we already have record, the least amount of job security that we've ever seen, and we're going to have record unemployment rates. Now, what does that mean for our society? I think since people get so heated about the topic, we actually need to take a bigger, higher level overview of what's happening here. The average car sits for 96% of the day completely unused, just sitting idle. That 30% of our entire city is devoted to parking spaces. So literally storing these chunks of metal. On top of it, to my surprise, I never knew this, which is a pretty awful stat, that car accidents, or cars in general, are the #1 killer of children. And on top of that, which blew me away, is that 3% of our GDP, 3% of our GDP is car accidents, which is just ridiculous, right? So what I think we need to do is we need different measurements of what it means to be successful. If GDP is our biggest KPI that we look at, is how are we thriving as an economy? And if we know that 3% of that is just purely car accidents alone, I think we need measurements that really dial in on how are we as a society, and how are our community connections, how happy are we, how aligned with our purpose and our values are we, and how sustainable is the lifestyle that we're creating. Now, one question that I think we need to constantly ask is this good for society? Is this moving us forward? And there's a couple ways that we can do that. One is by controlling our future with how we spend our money. Every dollar that we spend casts a vote for the type of world that we want to live in. And the other one, which I think is extremely relevant for a room full of professionals like you, is using business as a tool to make a difference in the world. Using our time and talents in our professions and moving society forward. How can we do this? Well, one is developing an awareness. I believe that awareness is the key to true education. That education is less about knowledge, but more about simple awareness, an awareness of how our actions impact each other and the world around us. I also believe that with an awareness, we can be able to choose how we can live a life that's in line with our values. So understanding what we value is a key to being able to shape our future with knowing what we want to create, where we want the world to go. Now, lastly, I believe that we have an extremely bright future ahead of us. And a group like this today really has the power in being able to control where we go. That movements and advancements in technology, movements like the sharing economy or collaborative economy really allows us to empower the next generation to really create a model where we all truly thrive. Now, for me, it was my time in Australia and feeling that same sense of community, that same sense of belonging that I felt in Australia, in San Francisco, and another 25 countries around the world. It was my introduction to this movement that showed me the amount of power that we have in our choices, in both how we choose to spend our money and how we choose to spend and invest our time and talents. Now, on a final note, I think the idea of the sharing economy, the word even sharing economy, we're going to completely lose it. And it's just going to be called the economy, because it's going to be so integrated into our lives, and it's going to be the future of how we think, act, and play. On top of that, it's going to be the future that we create that's sustainable because we chose to make it that way. So finally, let's come together and let's use our time and talents to move society forward. Thank you for your time.